Well, the old man and I snuffed out the little kerosene stove, broke the skiff free of the ice that bound her, and shoved happily off for home and fire. The snow had started again, but the wind had dropped, and the sky was still filled with enough low-flying ducks to have provided 100 years' imprisonment for a man who wished to overshoot his quota. When we dragged the boat up on the shingle and shouldered the strings of fowl and the guns, and the old man smiled sort of sardonically at the putty gray skies. "Your grandma ain't gonna believe it," he said, "but I think this was one of the prettiest days I ever saw in my life. Any argument?" "No, sir," I said. "I ain't arguing. You can have them bluebird days. I don't ski, as I would rather contract pneumonia without breaking my back in the process, but I can see now where a snowfall that wrecks a city's transportation can be a thing of beauty to a man who straps staves on his feet and goes hurtling down a hill to sudden disillusion. The older I get and the more places I have hunted, and the more I figured the old man was dead right, as usual, about suffering. Ernie Pyle, the late war correspondent, once wrote that he had been sicker in more hotel rooms than any living man, and I swear I have been scareder, hotter, colder, dizzier, more extensively bug-bitten, sun-stricken, breathless, witless, and generally unhappier than any of the old penitentials who used to climb mountains wearing hair shirts and beating themselves rhythmically over the shoulders with whips for fun, and all in the name of happy outdoor sports. I get vertigo just crossing a plank bridge over a 6-inch deep creek, but now it seems everything I hunt is placed on top of a peak that would make a molehill out of Everest. I took up grouse hunting once because I thought moor was a kind of lowland bog, at least a marsh, and I found out that a Scottish grouse moor is always placed at the highest peak at the highest range, and that no matter how the cards fell for the draw of butt position, I drew the nearest to the top. I took up elephants as an art form once because I thought you could find them on level ground. You can find them on level ground, all right, but yet you've got to climb Mount Kenya first and then walk a rough 100 miles before you discover that the owner of the big fat track you've been following has only one lousy tusk. In a hunting business, there seems to be no pleasure without excruciating pain. You got to hurt to be happy. I was mixed up in an Alaska brown bear hunt not too long ago, and it seemed to me all I did was crawl through thick brush on my belly, trying to make the summits of mountains I never cared for even pictorially, in order to sit glumly in the rain and let the mosquitoes bite me. I had heard of Alaskan mosquitoes, but never believed they actually carried 4 motors. They do. I shot a bear eventually and got hit on the head by it. I shot it in the heart, and it had enough adrenaline left to run straight away from me up the face of a mountain for about 60 yards before it decided to die and come roaring down again like a Sherman tank out of control. 1,000 pounds of bear bounced between me and the guide, and later I reflected that this would have been a silly way to die. Sample conversation around the Cracker Barrel. "What happened to Ruark?" "Oh, he was hit in the head with a bear. Always said he'd come to a bad end." Whoever might have made this snide remark would not have included the fact that in order to get hit in the head with a bear, you have to push a skiff about a half a league in shallow water, breathing the delightful aroma of rotting salmon, and then stumble another half a league onward over moss-slick stones, feeling the gruesome fleshy squish of the same rotting salmon under booted foot before you get to the base of the mountain you must climb in order to see the bears in a 9-foot jungle of lush grass. A bear is not a bear. It is a far distant black grubworm on a piece of ragged yellow carpet, and shortly it will go away, never to be seen again. That's if it is worth shooting. You fairly have to fight your way through the she bears with half-grown cubs, each of which could throw a horse over its shoulder and gallop in a country mile. But the big boys are all mobbed up in the hills, eating blueberries and playing poker. The thing most non-hunters don't realize about the artistic pain that goes into filling our 4 ounces of flesh and feathers or 7 tons of elephant with the correct prescription is that when you walk out that way, you gotta walk back this way. Non-fishermen don't realize that the current is likely to run steadily in one direction, and if you float downstream, eventually you have to fight your way upstream. From rabbit to tiger, from bobwhite to buffalo, from sand perch to marlin, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And the animals have us always topped on a simple axiom. Nothing moves very much except in early morning or late afternoon, which means you leave camp in blankets, freezing dawn, and return cursing, stumbling, bone sore in the chill of even blacker night. Except that now you are thorn wounded, stone bruised, ankle wobbly, nose running, lip parched, bug bit, and nearly always without the thing you went after in the first place. I do not know how many dusty miles I have driven in Kenya and Tanzania, in North Carolina and Texas, how many bogged down vehicles I have rescued, how much mud I have slogged through, how many busted axles, how many tsetse fly bites, how many wait a bit thorns, how much blazing sun, or how much grinding monotony, aggravated by cracked lips and blistered feet. I do not remember the pain when I see a noble head on the wall, whether it's a whitetail or a really good buff. I just remember the triumphal coming into camp with the horn beeping and promise of a cold martini before a hot fire. But I do remember the aching agony of my legs on a little 20-mile jaunt after elephant, when we had struggled through the highest, closest clenched grass and past the ugliest, rarest rhino I ever hoped not to see any more, to finally achieve the blessed level calm of a railroad bed. I sighed and thought, now we're home. But a sadist named John Sutton smiled brightly and said, well, we're almost there. It's only another 7 miles. I made it, God knows how, but the elephants have been safe from me since. The most self-punishing hunters I know today are millionaires who have been there and been, who's shot it all and don't really want to shoot anymore. They just want to see and to suffer. One is just back after searching a couple of months for what is, in these times, the most mythical grail of an elephant that will go 150 pounds or better per tusk. I doubt he shot anything larger than a sand grouse during the trip, because he is not interested in killing just to hear the gun go off. But he must have been spending a minimum thousand a week just to walk in foot-sucking sand, following seductive tracks through razored dwarf palm, only to end up in daily disappointment and the long trek back. What makes them do it? Why go to all that bother? It isn't entirely curiosity, because the guy I have in mind has made at least 8 safaris. It must get back to the old man's theory that you ain't happy unless you're hurtin', and that somewhere in the hurt you cleanse yourself of a lot of civilized nonsense that spreads a thick veneer on the hides of people, like a scabby overpaint, when what you really need first is a scrape job or a blowtorch. You scrape it off, you sweat it off, you walk it off, your head gets clearer, your senses sharper, and when you do come back, blistered, thirsty, too tired to be hungry, too weary to wash, some of the nonsense of today has been burnt away. Some beauty has been observed, some hardship overcome, some sympathies established, and there is a wondrous satisfaction about honest fatigue. I remember once I took a hardcore city slicker, a man who did not like dogs, who knew nothing of guns or game, on a pheasant hunt in Connecticut, which was blanketed with a light early autumn snow. The fellowship in the snug cabin was excellent, the food fine, the next day the dogs worked beautifully, the birds were plentiful. We had what is generally described as a magnificent day in the blazing autumn woods, and the bourbon was beneficent when we came in, beat with a lovely bag of birds and memories to the beckoning fingers of the fire. Our man had missed manfully. His stork club training had done little for his wind as we trudged the snowy hills. Finally, if only to vindicate himself to the dogs, he more or less accidentally killed a magnificent cock pheasant and insisted on carrying it personally all the weary way back to the lodge. He leaped immediately to the phone and called all of his acquaintances, and they are widespread, including Europe and Mexico, to declaim his prowess over the rumpled bird that he still stroked mentally as he talked. He finally sat down, emotionally overcome. How long has this been going on, he asked, and where have I been all my life? I don't know, possibly somewhere beyond the point reached when the first caveman did in the first hairy mammoth for food and clothing, and then was constrained to scratch its picture on the wall. Something between gratification of the hunger pains and some essential element of aesthetic conflict between man and animal, man and bird, man and death took over to build hunting into an art form of appreciation and self-sacrifice, of a willingness to punish the hunter's body to make a point of personal egotism. with, finally, a possible tangible reward at the end. A plume to deck the cave lady's head, a fine tusk to turn into a rude plowshare, and always the fire, the snugness inside to hold the elements aloof once the dreadful travail of the day was done. And then the old boy can sit down with the braggies to tell all the cave kids how good Papa done that day with his spear. It is, I suppose the old man would say, a form of crawling back into the cave, but all I want ahead of it is a long, hard day's work in the woods, so that I'll feel I've earned it when the cave lady brings me some dinosaur broth or even a brontosaurus hamburger, quietly, one time.